Psychology in Seattle.
Humberto, have you seen the movie called Toy Story?
I have heard of it, yes.
Oh, you've seen them.
I've seen them.
You've seen all four of them.
I have. I've seen several of them multiple times.
Let's talk about the psychology of all four Toy Story movies. What do you say?
I love it.
This is the Psychology in Seattle podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist, and I am a professor in Seattle. Who are you, Humberto?
My name is Humberto Castañeda, and I sew together bandanas, but my annas are more general, not just for bands.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah.
So what would it be like to be the toys? Because I feel like if we talk about the psychology of the toys themselves, I think we could really... It's pretty frightening to think about what it would be like to actually be those toys.
Right, because was there a development period for these toys, like childhood? Or is it they come into existence and they are what they are?
We saw for the very first time a toy actually coming into existence. Well, we've seen it twice.
You mean with Sporky or Forky, whatever?
So with Forky, and then we also saw in Toy Story 1 when Buzz Lightyear becomes sentient.
That's right.
You know, he's turned on and comes out of the box, boom. And so we see what that's like. No, you come fully formed with a personality.
Which is tricky, right? Because why do they have anxieties and fears and different personalities? But fine, I'll allow it.
So
they don't have parents. They never had a childhood.
Right.
They don't have any of those memories.
They live forever.
They are immortal.
Unless they're destroyed as a toy.
But they don't get
old.
Sick from colds and things, it seems like.
Right.
They can get owies, like broken limbs. And
They don't sleep.
They don't sleep.
So there's just some...
Oh, right, because they also have to be ready to play at any moment.
Yeah. I don't remember there ever being a scene where one of the toys woke up.
Do they use the bathroom? No.
Yeah, they don't go...
They don't eat.
I mean, that's nice. Yeah, they don't eat. I don't think they have to breathe.
Why would they?
Yeah.
So toys have to be they have to survive plastic bags all the time.
Yeah. So toys they're just like human beings. They have the same desires. They want to have fun. They want attachments. They fall in love. They want to feel like they have self-esteem. They want to be entertained.
But they can't procreate.
So, but the most important element of the toys' existence that would impact their psychology is the fact that many toys are left in a box or an attic or a drawer or underneath your bed for years without anyone playing with it.
So they want to be played with. Because them being left in the box by itself is okay because they can get up, move around, do stuff. But the fact that no human is playing with them. So they have kind of a very unhealthy attachment to being played with by a human.
Yeah, they're mostly, but they play around with that throughout the different movies in that sometimes some toys are like, screw kids.
Right.
So they're not programmed to play with kids.
It's not a programmed mandate, but it is many of them seem to have a need to be wanted by a kid, to be needed.
Right. Forky, though, did not really.
No.
Forky came into existence and just considered himself to be trash.
Yeah, I just want to be in the trash.
And just wanted to go in the trash and didn't really care about Bonnie, who had created him.
Right.
But the biggest thing here that I feel like needs to be emphasized is Jessie, for example, Woody's counterpart, the girl. We consider like a sister or something.
Yeah.
She was bought by a girl, Emily, I believe her name was, and in the 60s, and was playing, she had her best friend, and they would go to parks together and they play together. And then one day her owner, her kid, became a teenager and started putting on makeup and had friends and had psychedelic rock posters on the wall. And she didn't play with her toys anymore, and that's normal. 17-year-old isn't going to play with her dolly anymore necessarily. And so the dolly is under the bed. She just sort of fell under the bed one day, and the kid just never went looking for the dolly. So for what seems to be 4 years, maybe as much as 8 years.
Yeah, a long time.
Jessie is left in the same position under the bed, completely sentient, and eyes wide open, never falling asleep.
Well,
So it's like you have, that locked in syndrome.
yeah,
Where
it's like that.
dust is building up on side of her.
Now that the world is through with me.
And she's just watching the feet of her once like best friend occasionally walk by the bed. Years and years of just sitting there doing nothing.
But why? She could get up at night, walk, go play with the other toys, and then come back to the same position. They do it all the time. Why
I think
do they manipulate our emotions like this?
it's a good. I don't know. She's waiting or something. But okay. So let's say Jessie made a bad choice.
Yeah.
Other toys like in Toy Story 2, the Stinky Pete, the played by Frasier, I believe, voiced by Frasier, was never bought, and so he was in a box for years and years and years and years. So he's not playing with any. He can only talk to people, maybe. But then other toys, like Squeaky, the
penguin with the wheezy.
Yeah, Wheezy.
Yeah.
Is put on a very tall shelf and is too far away to be able to interact with anyone. And he was up there for years. Other toys are put in a box somewhere in the attic without anyone else.
Yeah.
And so that's a terrifying proposition.
So I wonder if part of it is, in the world rules here, if you are able to move around and do stuff, but only if you're kind of in the active mix of toys that the child has, and then after a certain point, maybe you start freezing and can't play. Maybe
like your brain slows down.
Like the Tin Man rusts. And
I mean, that would be a welcomed side effect for sure. But they certainly never indicated that. But to me, that would be terrifying. I mean, can you imagine the boredom of what that would be like?
Now, what is it like though when you don't have a limited lifespan? As an example.
Oh, you just sort of like, well, I'm going to live forever. So
does time, do you remember that story in The Hitchhiker's Guide where the robot is left for, I forget how long, it was decades, was it? So like forever in this one planet sitting there waiting, and it's that same kind of thing.
Yeah.
But when you, a human being, if you have to sit there under a bed immobile for 20 years, that sucks. That's like easily a fourth of your life.
Yeah.
But for a toy, it could be nothing. But it might be alive thousands of years from now.
Okay, so put me in a situation like that for 3 hours. I'm gonna go crazy. So I don't care about the amount of the proportion of one's life. I'd probably anyway. And
it didn't seem to have any lasting trauma, though, right?
Well, so the bad guys like Lotso in 3 and Stinky Pete in 2, they kind of and in 4 played what was her name, Gabby.
That's true.
They did have trauma from rejection.
Yeah, from rejection and
being left alone.
Yeah, but not from being frozen necessarily. Just
right.
We do have to admit that like the toys do have an ability to appear immobile completely.
Yeah, they just sort of flop themselves.
And that they often have to do this on command because humans come in and there's some rule that the humans can't know that they're...
I mean, that's got to take a toll too. Imagine this giant creature is just throwing you around, and because in the show, in the movies, when people fall, they're hurt. It's not like they're they feel pain. Anyway, which toy would you be in the Toy Story universe?
Oh, wow. Definitely Buzz.
Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, it would, because, he can fly. It's in the sci-fi genre, which I would have preferred much more. He is a good guy, and he tries to do good. Yeah, he was a little naive, but he was an extrovert. I mean, I would totally be Buzz.
Who would I be, do you think?
You would be Woody, of course.
I don't think so.
You are. You're a cowboy. You're trying to keep everyone organized. You wear your hat and your lasso.
Okay. Who else do you think I would be?
Let's see. Well, maybe the one that's the voice that's in all the movies, in all the Pixar movies.
There's a number of them.
Oh, yeah, but the Cheers guy.
Oh, he's the pig.
The piggy.
I'd be the pig?
Yeah, because you're the voice of reason.
He's not necessarily the voice of reason. You're thinking of Slinky. He's the voice of reason.
Is he the voice of reason?
Yeah, I think Slinky the dog is more the voice of reason. The pig is more kind of selfish and then
Pragmatic. Okay, pragmatist.
The
All right,
Slinky's
fine.
always like helpful.
Okay, then I'll give you Slinky. There you
Yeah,
go.
I was thinking Slinky.
Okay.
But I didn't realize this. He's voiced by Ernest. You remember? Hey, Vern. Remember that guy?
Really?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Did you have a best friend toy when you were a kid, Berto?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like
I still have it.
Like a Woody, like a...
Oh, it's Winnie the Pusito.
Oh.
It's a little Winnie the Pooh that I still have. It was... I probably got it when I was like 1 or something. The thing is like my age. It is missing a nose, from who knows how long. Like, it's been missing a nose for like 40 years.
Did you talk to it when you were a kid?
I talk to it still, yes, of course.
What kind of adventures did you have when you were 4 years old?
So Winnie the Pusito was in all the play with dolls and stuff. So he was Winnie the Pooh. He wasn't some alter ego, but he was like my own personal Winnie the Pooh. He wore a Mickey Mouse shirt.
What did he do? What relationship did you have?
He was my security blanket. I did also have a blankie. So my blankie and Winnie the Pusito were my security.
Did you talk
tokens.
to him?
I talked to him and made his voice. And my dad had to make his voice too.
What did he say back to you?
So, I mean, I'm trying to remember, like, the kind of things that would happen were he was always, like, younger than me. He's always been younger than me. So I was always trying to, like, big brother him along.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And
so he might be like, I'm scared. And you'd be like, it's okay.
Yes,
it's
that
okay.
kind of stuff. Exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then my dad would play along with that, too.
So at what point did you put Winnie the Pusito in a drawer and neglect it for years and years?
Never. Except...
And then feel guilty?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. So I personally never did that. It's just when I moved at 15, for some ridiculously cruel reason, I wasn't allowed to bring most of my stuff. And when I say most of my stuff, like literally 99.9% of my stuff, including my security blanket and my Winnie the Pooh, because I'm 15. No one needs those things at this point. So that got left behind in Colombia. And the first time I encountered Winnie the Pusito again, I was 21. 6 years later, my blankie was missing and Winnie the Pooh was still there.
How'd you feel?
I was so happy and I reclaimed it. I never again, then I took him with me and I was like, and I couldn't understand why didn't I take him with me in the first place? But the thing is that I was told by my mom to just, I packed one suitcase with clothes and not even that many clothes because she was going to buy me new clothes and stuff. My grandma put coffee bags in there and I brought almost nothing with me.
Well, it's also possible that at that age, 15, you weren't as focused on things like that as you would know to be later in life.
Knowing me both before the move and after the move, I wouldn't say so. What I would say is that I was so focused on getting the hell out of there and going to live with my mom that I pretty much agreed to anything.
I see.
And that included leaving behind my computer, leaving behind all my He-Man toys, leaving behind all my books, leaving behind my Winnie the Pusito and my blanket, everything.
Yeah.
And because I was 15, granted, I wasn't a 4-year-old going, no, I can't leave without Winnie the Pusito. I was more like, okay, I'm leaving this place and everyone here and I'm going to a new thing. But it didn't hit me for years. And when it hit hard.
What do you mean?
When I realized like I had left my whole childhood behind in one fell swoop and that I barely had any tangible things left behind from it.
So when you watch Toy Story movies, which often tap into that sadness and connection, does it hit you hard?
Niagara Falls, man.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I cried a lot during Toy Story movies.
Would you cry during 4?
4 was less impactful for me.
Man, I sobbed at the end.
Yeah, I guess 3 was the one where I thought was the best one so far.
Man, oh yeah.
And I was
that
a
one.
mess.
Yeah. When they're going into the incinerator.
Oh.
And oh God, it's scary.
Yeah.
It's like legit scary.
Yeah.
And then, I can't remember which of the toys. It's like the 8 main toys.
Right.
You got Mr. Potato Head, Mr. Potato Head, Slinky,
And the
T-Rex,
T-Rex.
the T-Rex, the pig, Woody, obviously Buzz,
And the gal, Jessie.
Jesse, right? And am I missing anyone in there? I think maybe there's one more. They realize it's over, and one of them realizes it first, and it's like, we're not getting out of this.
We're not getting out, right?
And then they reach out with their hand to, like, I guess let's just hold hands while we die, and then they all hold each other's hands.
I need a security blanket.
Where's Winnie Posito?
Winnie the Posito.
And then the claw that Deus Machina of God.
The claw. Did they have
Save
a
them.
little Martian with them at the moment? Maybe. Oh no, the Martians were
The Martians went to the claw when they first got there.
Right. And they were the ones that figured out how to.
Yeah. Which is sort of a Frodo moment, that the little guys save the day. But and so, like, because the claw moment in 1 was such a iconic.
Right. The claw chooses.
Ooh, the claw.
It's so great. I mean, 1, of course, was, but so 3, I was sobbing. Part of the problem with 4 is just to be fair to it, is I was really tired that day, and I missed a little bit during the middle because I dozed off a bit. So I need to rewatch it.
So I thought we would look at the bad guys. So in 1, the psychology of Sid.
Yeah.
So do you know what we diagnose him with, potentially?
Well, let's see. He seems to be left to his own devices a lot. So, like, I feel like there's not a lot of parental units around. And so he probably has some attachment disorders.
Yeah.
He might... he seems sadistic.
Right.
Sadistic, like he gets enjoyment out of putting these things to suffer.
Do you know what we call that in kids? You probably don't.
I don't.
We call it conduct disorder.
Conduct disorder.
Yeah. It's like kid version of psychopathy and sadism. So I just thought I'd read it here for them, DSM. A repetitive and persistent pattern of behavior in which the basic rights of others or major age-appropriate societal norms or rules are violated, as manifest by the presence of at least 3 of the following 15 criteria in the last 12 months. Okay, so let's go over those. So they're different categories. So at least 3. Often bullies, threatens, or intimidates others.
Oh, yeah.
So it's hard to say because these are toys, but...
Right.
You know,
but wait a minute.
But they're at least proxies for real people.
But isn't there an interaction with, like, a little brother or a little
sister?
A little sister. Yeah, the little sister.
He's mean to her.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not clear. If I'm going to really go by the DSM, like attachment disorder, there really wasn't any indication of that. It's probable, but we mainly see his relationship with his younger sister and mainly his toys. Often initiates physical fights. No, because we didn't see that.
We didn't see that.
Has used a weapon that can cause serious physical harm.
On toys.
Yeah. 4, has been physically cruel to people.
To his... was he physically cruel to his sister? I don't remember.
Has physically cruel to animals.
Our living toys animals?
See, now this brings up, in Toy Story, we really empathize with the toys.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because when you look at DSM stuff, they never
talk about toys.
You could be very sadistic to toys and not have that be an indication of anything, when in reality it probably is, right?
Yeah.
Having said that, most kids are very sadistic to their toys.
Well, but what about by extension though? Like, the fact is, okay, so you might be old enough to realize that this toy isn't really alive or whatever, but your little sister seems to treasure it so much, and yet you still go ahead and rip the head off.
So that's being mean to a human.
Yeah.
But, if you just look at most kids, particularly kids that are a little rambunctious, they shoot their things,
Sure.
they
throw them around.
Them. They, if they have 2 dinosaurs, they like to smash them into each other. Has stolen while confronting a victim, like a mugging or something. No. Has forced someone into sexual activity. No. Has deliberately engaged in fire setting.
He was doing fireworks.
Yeah, so you could say borderline there. Has deliberately destroyed other people's property.
Yes.
A little bit, yeah. Has broken into someone else's house. No. Often lies to obtain goods or services. Did he lie?
No.
Has stolen items of non-trivial value.
No.
often stays out at night despite parental prohibitions.
Not that we know.
Has run away from home. No.
No.
Is often truant from school. No, we
Don't
don't
know.
Okay, so we have a few there. We have basically, if we include cruelty to toys and the minor fire setting that it is. So he would potentially qualify for childhood onset type, and it would be mild.
But could we say that, because, as we know, he became sort of a genius video game programmer later in life.
Oh, he did?
Yeah. And granted, then there was the whole Bandersnatch problem, so we don't really know what happened with that. But
So Stinky Pete, the prospector.
you know what I mean, right?
No.
He looks so much like the Bandersnatch developer. Looks so much like him.
Yeah. But then he did a brief stint in a family that tried to smuggle drugs across the Mexican border.
That's true.
Stinky Pete, the prospector, he was the bad guy in 2. The thing I didn't really realize was their treatment of bad guys in the Toy Story movies was kind of interesting, because Sid was like this sadistic human. And then Stinky Pete, then they start introducing bad guys sometimes have backstories. And with Stinky Pete, he was never sold, like I said earlier. He was never loved, and he became very bitter.
Oh, and by the way, I feel like they must have felt like they risked writing themselves into a corner if they kept making only human bad guys, right?
Right.
Because at some point you either have to interact with them,
Yeah.
or whatever. Yeah.
Right. You can't really have a conversation with the bad guy.
Right.
Like Sid was anyway. So that's another part, getting back to the psychology of toys, is that you're supposed to not interact or reveal that you're sentient to humans.
Yeah.
But it's okay to do that.
Apparently it's not impossible.
And yet no toy on the entire planet has consistently broken that rule to be
Not consistent.
to be on television, for example.
Right. Because they don't care about that. They don't get paid. They don't have money.
But for example, Stinky Pete, the prospector,
Right.
if he wants to, he's a bad dude.
That's true.
Lotso is a bad, Gabby not so bad, but Lotso and Stinky Pete, these are bad dudes.
Right.
What was stopping them from just being like, humans, I'm sentient?
By the way, that's a good point, because if their goal was to be played with,
Yeah.
what better toy?
Or
I'm a talking toy.
or just one kid, just be like,
Sure.
hey kid, I'm sentient. If you try to tell anyone else that I'm sentient, I'll just act like I'm not. But
Right.
you and me, let's be
could
friends.
Be friends.
Yeah.
And I need to be played with. I want to be played with. And I'm a talking toy. How better can it get?
Yeah, I can do your homework for you.
And then at the grand scale, you could imagine, I forget, what was Stinky Pete's motivation?
So he was never sold. He was never loved. He became very bitter, and so he was in the box like his entire life. And then finally, a collector got him, and was trying to get the full set.
And he wanted to kind of. He was fine with being collected as long as it was all of them.
And the reason why is because if they all got collected, then they were going to go into a museum. And they were going to be loved by kids,
Right.
and adored better than any other toy.
But then that goes to your point. Hey, what better way to be universally loved as being the talking toy?
So that was
Is
Stinky
it a
Pete's
mutually assured destruction problem? Like if one does it, they all do it, and then no one's special?
It's just an interesting thing to think about, that you don't really think about much. Lotso in 3, the huggable bear.
Also, sorry, by the way, because we haven't exactly defined what is the difference between a toy and a non-toy, because clearly a fork with a little bit of paint can be a toy.
Yeah, what about like a drawing on a piece of paper?
Can a glass become a toy? Right? Because kids play with all sorts of stuff.
Well, it needs eyes and a mouth.
Okay, fair enough. Well, okay, I see. It needs eyes and a mouth. Even like a ball is not.
What about when you make your finger into a toy?
It's on my fingers a lot.
So Lotso, the huggable bear in 3, he had an owner, Daisy, and he was very much in love with Daisy. But then he got lost, and
my God, that was
he fought his way back home.
That scene was so sad.
And he found out he was replaced. Which you could imagine, right?
Oh, totally.
You're a kid, you've been without your huggable bear for a couple of days, and your parent, okay, we'll just get you another one.
Yeah.
And then he became very bitter, and he's like, screw people, and he says, you have to take your own destiny in your own hands. We still want to be played with kids, but and we need to survive by not being thrown away. But I'm not going to be owned by a kid. We'll get into more of that because there's some slavery hints there. Gabby in 4, similar to Lotso, rejected for having a bad voice box, and she goes way back to like the 40s or 50s or something. She is focused on getting a voice box from Andy because she thinks if she gets a voice box, the only reason why I was being rejected by people is because
of her voice box.
My voice box isn't working. She finally gets her voice box back. She's rejected anyway.
Right.
Because those dolls are considered creepy to kids these days. And then Woody helps her to become a toy for Bonnie. So I just thought it was interesting kind of they had Sid the first time, but then with the other 3, they definitely gave him like a pretty heartbreaking backstory.
Right.
And increasingly so. So with Stinky Pete, he had a difficult backstory, but he was evil. And then he was given to a chaotic child who liked to decorate a lot. And then Lotso had this really devastating backstory, his fate was to be put on the front grille of a truck. But then fast forward to 2019, where we have like more complicated, bad guys. You have Darth Vader and Kylo Ren and Breaking Bad, and you have these very complicated bad guys. And Gabby is like, I just like that trend, that even for kids' movies.
Yeah, right.
Because like kid movies and even adult movies back in the day, you had Arnold Schwarzenegger and you had the bad guy. Yeah, just a guy who's bad,
Spectre.
And today we have like, there's, and I like that because people are rarely just evil. There's trauma. There's reasons why they become defended. Right. So we can talk about attachment quite a bit here. I just mainly want to talk about Woody because his attachment to Andy and to Bonnie, I think, are pretty important. In the beginning, we see that Woody is. Well, let's take a break and we get back. Let's talk about attachment. So Umberto, in the Toy Story universe, if Buzz Lightyear, as your avatar, were to convince the listeners to become a patron of the podcast, how would he say it?
Hello, I am Buzz Lightyear, and I'm here to offer you a galactic opportunity to support the great podcast of Psychology in Seattle. Every kid needs good psychology to help them grow up, but to help them also keep playing with their favorite toys. So, to infinity and beyond, donate now.
So Woody says in the very beginning of 1, he's the favorite, and he's trying to be a good leader. And he's like, look, it doesn't really matter if Andy plays with us. It just matters if we're there when he needs us. But of course, Woody can say that because he's Andy's favorite, and he goes everywhere where Andy.
It's easy to say that when you're the number one.
Right. So in the beginning, it looks like, oh, Woody is, a secure, attached guy. Then Buzz shows up, and we see him replaced by Buzz. And what does Andy do in this situation? Or what does Woody do after he gets replaced by Buzz?
Right. I mean, he's quite jealous and wants to get rid of Buzz.
Yeah.
Which is quite extreme, right?
Yeah. From all of our talk about attachment theory and everything, do you know what sort of attachment style he might have? Maybe you weren't around when we talked about these 4 styles, but...
No, I don't know.
So he would be what we call preoccupied, where...
Oh, yeah, we did talk about, because we said I had preoccupied attachment aspects,
okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So...
But we hadn't seen that until, like you're saying, when Buzz shows up, you're all of a sudden like, oh, I see.
Right. Woody is instantly threatened by Buzz. Right. Like, the other toys are like, well, we'll see what happens. Welcome into the fold. But Woody is very much just like, what is up with this guy?
Yeah.
This guy's got to go. And he starts to shoot himself in the foot. So when you're preoccupied attachment, when you have been neglected or mistreated or not loved enough as a child, and your solution to that is to try to grab for love,
right,
and demand it and be very noticeable about your need for love, which is fine if it's pointed in a healthy way, but if it's pointed in an unhealthy way, it can do what it did to Woody, which is it started to turn his friends away from him. His friends were just like, geez, you're being kind of kind of jealous, and you're not being a very good friend. You're not being a very good team member. Then he actually threatens Buzz directly and says, "You stay away from Andy. No one's taking him away from me."
Yeah.
So this is like if this was a rated R movie, this would become like he's domestically violent, and it would get ugly.
And Buzz, by the way, at this point is certainly
he's oblivious.
Yeah, he's like, what?
Right. He has no idea. Yeah.
It's not like he's doing anything specifically to thwart Woody.
He's just trying to get a spaceship so he can get back.
Right, because he doesn't even think he's a toy. Still.
Right.
Yeah.
Woody is obsessed with being Andy's number one, kind of like a stalker in a way. He tries to take Buzz out by shoving him behind a desk, but he ends up, kicking him out of the house completely, knocking him onto the street, into Sid's yard, actually.
Right. And it makes Woody a pariah among his peers.
Everyone turns on him. Yeah. So this is the tragedy of having insecure attachment, is your defenses as a preoccupied person of making sure that your attachment needs are known and making sure that you really advocate for yourself very strongly is a useful defense when you're a kid, but as an adult, it ends up actually creating more rejection and more loneliness because it turns other people off and other people run away from you. That's the tragedy of development being complicated, is that not only you're mistreated growing up, but it affects your personality, so you end up shooting yourself in the foot as an adult.
Yeah, that's very hard, because the thing you're trying to do is a legitimate need, and you just don't know how to go about it.
I know. And, and soon, pretty soon you're putting 1,000 Valentine's hearts all over someone's college campus. And
who would do that? But so an interesting way, like if Woody was more balanced in this way.
Did you lift the flap?
Did you order the code flap? If Woody was more secure in his attachment style, he might have done something like called a little meeting with everyone, said, "Hey, I just want to share something. I now realize what a lot of you might have been feeling sometimes, because lately I've been feeling like Andy's not spending as much time with me, and that's actually kind of difficult." Stuff like this. And then I'm sure his peers would have been very supportive of that, might have even told their own stories. Well, yeah, that happened to me. Do you remember when this happened and you went with Andy on that trip? We all wanted to go that time. Right. And then that might have been a little healing. And then Buzz, well, maybe he was still off in La La Land, but once he came out of that, he might have been like, well, I'm not here to replace anyone. I actually, maybe we can find ways to play together. I'll recommend you to Andy. No, don't talk to Andy.
That's great. Yeah. I hadn't thought about that. But that makes a lot of sense, that Woody's fatal flaw was that he couldn't go to other people for support. He could have been like, man, you know what? At first I thought I could get Andy back, but now I don't know if I can. And then the other people go, well, we're here for you. Right. But he was very focused on the one person he needed to get that person back. Another lesson that I thought I pulled away from this episode, or from that early time with Woody in Toy Story 1, was polyamory. You don't necessarily get all your attachment needs from just one person. You can get your attachment needs from lots of people. Right. I mean, polyamory or just multiple attachments.
Sure.
Yeah, so we've already talked about that. I don't want to go into let's talk about John Lassiter for a second, because I feel like that's important to get into. So John Lassiter, if you're not familiar, he oversaw all the Pixar films. He was a god. He directed Toy Story and Toy Story 2. He directed a lot of the other Pixar movies. He was executive director on almost every Toy Story movie. He was like the main spokesperson. Or executive producer, sorry.
And my understanding is many of the ideas for the stories came from him.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Without him, Pixar might have been nothing.
Right.
So he's like the Steve Jobs of animated CGI children movies, which is a thing now, right? But there were allegations of sexual misconduct. Do you have any memory of it?
I remember when it happened and how frustrating it was to hear, because you have this association between Pixar and wonderful kids things, and then thinking, oh, this person's so amazing. And then it's like if you had heard Walt Disney had
Yeah.
allegations, and you're like,
Right. So he would, whenever they would do like a featurette or something, he would be the one that they would interview. And I remember watching these Pixar featurettes and just think, oh, this looks so, they had these, it was like one of those Google campus
Yep.
where everyone rode around on roller skates and they had fun, and each person's office had like funny decorations, and
Right.
and they just loved working there, and Pixar is this great place, and then to hear about what was actually happening, it's just like yikes.
Yes.
So from Wikipedia, 2017, Lassiter took a 6-month leave of absence after acknowledging allegations of workplace sexual misconduct that he described as missteps with employees and blah, blah. The alleged misconduct towards employees included grabbing, kissing, and making comments about physical attributes, just classic sexual harassment at work. The alleged conduct became so well known that, according to Variety, at various times, Pixar had minders who were tasked with reining in his impulses. So
What?
So they would hire people to be assistants to him, and their sole job was to make him stop doing that.
Oh, wow. That sounds so compulsive.
Yeah. Or I don't know how, it's hard to tell. So Vanity Fair, this is from Vanity Fair. Female employees described discomfort with Lassiter's physical affection, which included close hugs and kisses on the lips if a woman failed to turn her face away in time.
Jeez.
One person says, after one of those hugs, we'd joke to each other, boxers or briefs. So what I think this means is like he hugged me so close and with such pelvic force that I could feel his penis, At a recording session, she described an encounter that led her to feel strange around her boss. Quote, he leaned into my monitor and whispered in my ear, "You look so beautiful, that light in your eyes." It was the way a lover would talk to you. I remember him touching my back or leg or knee and just feeling ugh. So that's pretty classic.
Oh, man.
Pretty classic sexual harassment, and must be compulsive because it's just like, dude, like.
Well, if you have to have watchers paid for by the company,
Yeah.
like, come on.
Yeah, because someone came to him and was like, dude, you should probably rein that in.
Yeah.
Even if you're well-meaning with it, you're gonna ruin our country. You're gonna ruin our company. 2018, Disney announced that Lassiter would be leaving the company. Blah blah blah. He wrote a letter. It's been brought to my attention that I made some of you feel disrespected or uncomfortable. I especially want to apologize to anyone who has ever been on the receiving end of any unwanted hug or any gesture that they felt crossed the line in any way, shape, or form. So
That's not an apology.
why? Why?
Oh, a couple of things. First of all, it's been brought to my attention. That's like, I had no idea. Number one. Number two, that some of you, it's like clearly most of you love me, but some of you annoying squeaky wheels. And then it's like that we're perceived as.
Right.
And like he gives a broad swath of possibilities. And it's just the whole thing is like, sure, if I offended you, I guess I'm sorry.
Right. It's like that. It's like, especially this. I want to apologize to anyone who has ever been on the receiving end of an unwanted hug. So it's and I'm sure it was very well thought out in terms of how he would write this. His lawyer is probably involved as well. And instead of him saying, I knew that it was unwanted, but I did it anyway.
Yeah, or like I have a problem and like I didn't realize how bad the problem was, and like none of that stuff. Instead, it's, hey, if hugs, some people had problems with some of the hugs. I'm sorry.
Like it was
almost to say like,
it was
wait,
never
hugs?
made. Yeah.
Hugs were a problem?
Yeah.
Is that what they're lynching him for?
Yeah. Or any other gesture that they felt crossed the line.
They felt. Yeah.
Touching someone's knee, saying you look so beautiful, and whispering that in your ear. I mean, there's like hugs, okay, like it could be good, could be bad. That's like you don't really know. You have to be there.
Right.
But there is no situation in which a male boss whispering into a younger female's ear, whispering, "You look so beautiful."
Yeah.
There is
and then touching their knee.
There's no situation where that is not considered
Right.
a problem.
And the thing with the hug, so I've been in situations, probably in the last 15 years or so, I have been hyper vigilant and aware in business situations at my work. And so like when I'm putting together bandanas and stuff like that, and we're in a meeting, we're deciding the new design stuff, I never reach out ever physically, right? But there are some people that actually reach in and go for a hug, like females, and like after an event and stuff. So in those cases, I never like push them away or something, because I don't know. I personally feel that would be awkward in its own way. So I just do it, but it's a very quick like pat, that kind of thing. But there's a very big difference between that and like, come here, hug, like, and all the time, and like, you know, that like that's a different thing.
Yeah, I'm always just, when I see people like that, I'm like, okay, you're a hugger. Do you not have enough people to hug in your life?
Yeah.
Because that doesn't have to happen at work.
Yeah.
Do you have your family? Do you have your friends? Like, go for it. I'm a hugger.
Yeah.
Like I'm playing Dungeons and Dragons with some old friends from college. And, you know, like you and I usually hug when we first see each other and when we say goodbye. And I do that with a lot of my friends, even friends that I think they probably only do that with me, but we have a routine. But with these new D&D guys, I haven't seen them regularly, you know, but I'm starting to see them more regularly. And I hug them every time. And a couple of them are always kind of like, oh, okay, let's hug.
Oh, we're hugging. This is what we're doing now.
Yeah, and they're fine with it, but it sort of is, you know. So my point is like, I'm sexually harassing all my friends.
Well, it was just, yeah. It's just
No, my point is that if you're a hugger, and I'm a hugger, hug away with people that you are fairly sure, if not, ask them. But
and especially where you don't have a managerial,
Right.
professional relationship with.
where the underling would have high motivation to keep their feelings to themselves. And, you know, go for it and have physical intimacy, hold hands, hug for a long period of time.
Right.
When it comes to work and you're a fucking boss, you know, grow a fucking neuron. Like Lassiter was a genius. The fact that he didn't have two neurons to rub together and realize maybe some of these women are not into this.
They were rubbing together the wrong way.
He knew that's the point. And for him to make a quote unquote apology where he's like, well, I never knew. It's like, dude, you know,
It's been brought to my attention.
Yeah. Your IQ isn't 75.
Yeah.
You had to have known.
Yeah. Especially because like all that stuff, the narration of it, I actually hadn't heard all these details. It sounds calculated. Like, just like, I think I'm going to do this now. And I'm going to come into the office at this moment because it's later and I'm going to, you know, I could totally see it. Like
Now, Lassiter in all likelihood has some damage in his life that he's been through to produce this sort of impulse and lack of ability to control himself or lack of empathy in a situation like that. But yeah,
and I can fully relate to those kinds of things.
Yeah. The other thing, so changing the topic here because we have about 10 more minutes. There's a moment where in Toy Story 2, where it's sort of like Last Temptation of Christ, like not the movie also, but also just like
it's just like that.
the Bible story. It's when Jesse and Stinky Pete and Bullseye are laying out to Woody and saying, look, if you come with us, we'll be in a museum, we'll live forever. Andy's going to grow old.
Yeah.
And you're going to get put in the attic. You're going to get put in the garbage. You might not even, if you go home right now, you know, your arm got ripped off. You might actually never get played with again. Yeah. Now you can go back. But if you stay with us, then you can have the whole world.
They'll fix your arm. You'll be in a pristine care. And I love movies where the bad guys or the antagonists present such a compelling argument that you're almost, okay, actually, it's not such a bad argument.
Which, like, you know, Kylo Ren and Rey, when Kylo and...
Please don't use that term around.
When, you know, because they're in a relationship. When Kylo is reaching out to Rey and saying, I just killed the emperor.
Yeah.
It's now you and me. Because it's different than before when the emperor was enticing Luke
Right.
and saying, join me. This time it's like, Kylo's like, look, I'm the son of Princess Leia and Han Solo.
Right.
I was Luke Skywalker's student. We can make a difference here. So he's not eternally evil. Like you know that there's a sensible person in there that used to exist anyway.
Right.
And Rey and him together, it's conceivable that if they actually did rule together, that Rey could rein in Kylo's bad impulses, and Kylo could be powerful, because you need a powerful leader over a galaxy, right?
Right.
And when you watch the movie, if you look at it simplistically, it's like, well, Kylo is asking for something evil.
Yeah.
But if you really look at it, it was an
He's presenting a non-stupid, trivial argument.
Right.
And that's what happens in that moment. It's like, well, actually,
yeah,
maybe I should go.
yeah, because there was a part of me when I was watching the numerous times I've watched it, where I'm just like, hey, Andy is getting older.
Yeah.
And that world is kind of scary.
Right.
You could get lost. Your buddies could get lost. Right. This world, it's like you're a collector's item. You're never going to get lost.
No.
You're always going to have this family, and you're going to meet other toys in the museum, and you're going to have a whole adventure there.
And they'll be a lot of them will be from the same era. You'll have memories together. Now, what's genius of the show and the way the movie and the universe they constructed is that they were still able to give us enough rules so that we could see what the righteous but more difficult path was, which was, yes, that actually makes a lot of logical sense, but our duty is to our owners.
Which is a very Judeo-Christian way of looking at life, by the way. It's not a very, what were the ancient Greeks, the hedonists?
Yeah.
It's not a very...
The Epicureans.
It's not a very Epicurious way of looking at life. It's a very way of just like, well, this is too easy. I have a duty, and my purpose, which is divined by God, which is sort of like Andy or just the way of the world, is that I am Andy's toy.
Yeah.
And I must return.
And so, yes, you actually make a great point, and that would be the easier path.
Just like Jesus, it would be the easier path for me to go with you, Satan, and rule the world.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Jesus, like this dude I know. He's like amazing tattoo artist.
Well, he was, tempted, right? The last time he was tempted. And then Jesus decides, no, I'm going, and in the Last Temptation of Christ movie, he actually goes with the temptation, and then on his deathbed regrets it and wants to go back in this pretty beautiful shot Scorsese way. But in the Bible, it's depicted pretty quickly. He says no, and then Jesus says, no, I have to go to the pain. I have to go to the duty. I have to sacrifice myself for society.
Right.
And, if you're a Christian, and if you've watched Toy Story 1, then you're rooting for Woody to go back to Andy.
Right.
But if you just look at it from a Epicurean point of view, it's like, dude, why?
Why?
Like, Andy doesn't know you're alive.
Yeah.
Andy is going to eventually put you in a box, which he did right after 2, by the way. Because they go to 3.
Right.
And in 3, Woody and all the other toys have been stuck in a box.
Yeah.
And many of the other toys have been given away, which they didn't depict, by the way.
Oh, because Andy in 2 was leaving for college?
Right.
And in 3, he's at college already.
No. At 2, ends he's a kid.
In 3, he was going to college.
At 3, he is 18 and going to a college. And the toys, we learn, for the past 5 years have been in a Foot Locker without anyone playing with them, because Andy won't let his younger sister play with his toys. And so, it's an interesting question that when I watch it with more sort of paying attention, I'm like, wow, that was an interesting, if you really look at that choice.
Sure.
Now, in the end, as Andy's like, okay, I'm going back, we learn that Stinky Pete's evil. And so it was the right choice because Stinky Pete at his core was actually a bad person.
But we didn't know that in the moment. And, well, unless you were predicting. You could say that to some extent about the third one, but I think they tipped their hand sooner on the third one with Lotso.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's talk about suicide, this Forky. A lot of people are, writing about it, like on Twitter. People are writing, I can't believe they centered the fourth Toy Story movie around a suicidal spork.
Wait, suicidal?
That's the most 2019 millennial shit I've ever seen.
Wait, why suicidal?
Another person write, there's a Forky in every group. Yeah, so it's very, everyone on the internet is like, Toy Story 4, Forky, suicide. You have questions. What are they?
Well, I mean, I guess if we're going to change the rules all of a sudden, my understanding is that Forky doesn't want to go to the trash because he wants to stop existing. He just he feels like he belongs in the trash. That's where he feels comfortable. But I don't think, does he die when he goes into the trash?
Well, I think it's sort of implied that he doesn't want to be alive, but I have the same questions that you do. I think when you watch it, maybe the trailer or something, it looks like suicide. But when I was watching this show, I never got the impression that Forky wanted to die. It was more of Forky was this weird abomination that sort of was this weird Bonnie creation, and jumbled together parts that don't really fit right. And to me, when I watching it the first time, I didn't really think about this, but I think that the Toy Story universe, there are essential purposes to objects and people. Mm-hmm. And so to Woody, when he was created, when Buzz Lightyear was created, they have this essential purpose to be dutiful to a child and to desperately want that child to play with them. To Forky began, or at least that ended its journey as trash.
Yeah,
it's a disposable utensil. It was in the trash. I think Bonnie actually gets him out.
Wasn't it Woody? Because Woody was trying to help Bonnie not be so sad,
and
so
something like that. Yeah,
and I think you're right. So like the life cycle of a spork, of a plastic spork, would have been gets used for eating,
for 5 minutes.
5 minutes, and then gets disposed of, and
right.
That's the happy cycle.
Right, and so when Forky becomes sentient, it is still in that essential purpose of I've got to go to.
I got to go to the trash.
Yeah, I want to go to. In the same way that I don't want to be a servant to Andy, an 8-year-old child, for the rest of my life.
Right.
But if my essential purpose was that, then I would.
Right.
That would be my instincts. Well, the instinct of a spork is to go to trash.
Right. I look at it a lot more like, okay, if we were going to look at Dead Poets Society, it's not the last part of the movie where the kid commits suicide. It's the first parts of the movie where he doesn't want to be a military kid. He wants to be an artist, right? Sporky wants to be a trashist.
Right. But Woody convinces him otherwise, and he changes his purpose.
Right. If anything,
he's causing him to commit suicide.
Yes, because you could argue that the thing that caused the Dead Poets Societies to kill themselves was not being a trashist.
The other thing noted, so I rewatched all 4 of the movies recently, or all 3, the first 3, because I just watched 4, was I noticed how male-centric the movies were in the beginning, and still mostly are.
Definitely.
Yeah. So when I was, Toy Story 1 came out 95, so I'd have been 24, 2 was 99. So at this time in my life, and in society, we hadn't really seen the matrix in terms of how male-centric our society is.
Right.
And watching this movie, and again, you can have a male-centered movie, but it was just like, this is a movie marketed to kids. It's not marketed to boys. This is a movie marketed to all kids, and it should include girls, right? But there's almost no female characters in the movie to begin with.
In the first one, yeah.
But throughout, 1, 2, and 3, 4, it gets a little better with Bo
I
Peep.
think in 2 they brought in Jessie to try to address this, right?
But she's not exactly a full round. She's a very secondary character.
I agree.
And she's basically Buzz Lightyear's sexual target. You know what I mean? I mean, she's at least it's a girl, and that's in the movie, right? But it's still pretty sidelined.
Well, no, I'm not disagreeing. I guess I'm saying is they must have realized that Toy Story 1 was 100% on one side. So they started going like, well, I think we need to.
Maybe. I wonder, though. I wonder if it was just sort of random. Like, well, how about
It can't because she was better than Woody at being Woody in many cases. Like, she was a better cowgirl than he was a cowboy.
Yeah.
So I think there was a little bit of that.
And I think in 4, they did that sort of, because that's sort of like step 2 of moving away from male centrism, which is like, well, how about we put a girl character in there, but she's really good at things. It's sort of like Marge,
Sure.
and Lisa. It's like, well, okay, we'll put a girl in there, but and okay, we'll please the women by making them really good at, but that's not interesting. It's not full rounded. If you want to put an actual female character, she has to have all the angles. She's got to have good parts and bad parts, just like Woody and Buzz and all the others. Bo Peep enters in Toy Story 4 as like maybe the very first strong female characters.
And the villain is a female.
Right. But they're still not, the focus per se. We're very much focused on, and she's very much like the maternal attractor for Woody. It's not like Bo Peep's story. Now,
and it's hard because their main characters are already defined.
Right. The main characters are already defined. You can't just start creating brand new characters and expect the audience to go along with that. I get it. But I'm just saying, like, and I think you're shoehorned in with all Toy Story movies to some extent.
In fact,
but it's just notable when I was rewatching through my now awoken brain to this. Immediately I was like, whoa, like this is, I mean, it's not horrific, but I was just like, man, like there's no girl characters in here that are role models or interesting I
felt like Marvel kind of dropped the ball with that too, because if you think about it, they're like, okay, well, shoot, we're very male heavy. Let's make a movie with a female is the heroine. But if you compare like Wonder Woman versus Miss Marvel or whatever, the Miss Marvel was kind of a tokenization of like, okay, well then we'll have a female Superman, and she's just perfect and the most powerful one, but like little on the character side,
exactly
side,
right. Like if you want to, like Wonder Woman, but even Wonder Woman, it's still like
it's not perfect, but I felt
like
they did a better job.
The Chris Pine character had more character than the Wonder Woman character did.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
More human. The thing is,
sure, they made her still alien-ish. That's true.
Right. So, because to men, women are alien.
Yeah.
And so, if you wanted to make a movie about a female character, you should have. I guess make it with Scarlet Witch, because Black Widow was pretty one-dimensional as a character. Maybe you could flesh her out a little bit because she's kind of wooden.
Well, yeah, because the other issue is that usually in movies where they try to make like, okay, well, this is an action movie where the female is the star, but essentially it's a man's role.
Right, masculinized woman, which is fine. But again, if that's all you have, people are like, well, always about quotas. No, we're talking about is like if. Well, we don't have to go over that. Anyway, The last few things I want to talk about are duty. There's a lot of talk about, the duty of Woody and of Buzz Lightyear and the toys. It's like you have to serve your duty in life. And I feel like that's a lesson they're trying to teach the kids. That's what I was trying to think is like, what lessons, because, children's movies are about lessons.
Sure.
So what lessons are they trying to teach?
That slavery was okay.
Right, because, it's like this class of sentient creatures that have no power and are completely discarded and not really heard or listened to, and they have to be...
Right, toys should be played with, not heard.
Yeah. It's like... But I think I think that's just the plot device that they say, and the real lesson is... friendship, give to others, help other people, don't leave anyone behind.
Yeah. And certainly in the first movie, that is completely redeemed. In the second one, I think that turning point where Woody decides to go back, even though you could say, well, it's like a slave relation. But in reality, what it is like, well, the easier option is to go kind of live a comfortable life. The harder option is to finish your job, right? And your job in this case is because you have a relationship with this child. And so it's almost like a parenting thing, right? Like it's like,
right.
Yeah, it's easier to leave and be a single person with no cares. But what if you had to be a parent?
Yeah. So another way of looking at these movies is it's preparing kids to be parents, is that you don't, when you're a parent, particularly the way that parents are taught to parent today in the United States, is when you parent, you don't think about yourself, which is a bad lesson to have, by the way. It's a very out of kilter life choice. But that's the modern vision of parenting, is that your child takes, is absolutely number one.
Yeah.
And all of whatever they want, they get, and you have no wants, and you're just there to them. That's your only role.
Right.
You're just a toy to this child. You're just a parent to this child. And when if the child puts you in the attic, you wait there until the child comes. And if the child never comes back to you, then you're just in the attic.
Your lot in life. That's fine.
Your only purpose.
Right.
This is not a good way to live life as a parent. And I feel like that's kind of a lesson that they're trying to teach people. Yeah. The last thing I'll say is that in 3, there's this daycare, which I really liked because my mom had a daycare growing up, and a lot of the same toys like that, like that telephone.
Totally.
Yeah, my mom had that. And so my mom's daycare was in our house. And it wasn't a separate part of the house. They were all over in my bedroom.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
In my living room.
Oh, that'd be trippy.
In my bathroom, in my kitchen. Like they were, essentially, I had from the age of, 7 to 18, I had like 15 younger siblings.
Oh my God, I didn't realize this.
Yeah.
That's insane.
You've been to my parents' house.
Oh, I have.
They were all over. The only place they couldn't go
incredible.
was upstairs, but I never went upstairs. So
Oh my God, that's crazy.
yeah. So
I had no idea.
so it's just kind of nice to see that because,
Well, another thing though, you and our generation can relate to is the toys they picked for the movie, especially the first movies.
All of them,
Yeah.
because the thing that I think is brilliant about that choice of the and maybe it just appealed to the artists themselves and the creators themselves, is that often the toys you have are not from that time. They're like hand-me-downs, especially like the toys that are put in the big bin, right? It's
totally.
Just toys that have been around the family a long time. Anyway, the last thing I want to say is in 3, they're in the daycare, and Lotso is like, okay, there's the young kid room and the older kid room.
Yeah.
And in the young kid room, toys get destroyed.
Yeah.
And so
It's mayhem.
what's our solution here? Okay, solution here is the new guys, they go to the young kid room and get destroyed. Meanwhile, we get to stay in the big kid room and have nice time. So there's a class system essentially.
Yep.
Where you have the underclass, which are the new people, and the overclass, or the middle class, which is actually the toys in the good room, and then you have the overclass, which is the humans, and the kids, I suppose. And so, in many societies are like this. Like, for example, in our society, in the United States, you have middle class people who put down working class people, or people who are oppressed in rural Alabama putting down black people who are oppressed. It's a very common societal phenomenon.
It actually made me think, and I'm sure this was completely on purpose too, because his role, where he was from, everything, Lotso, made me think of essentially the house butler in a southern mansion,
right,
in slavery times.
He was voiced, I think, by a black man too. Lotso.
Okay.
I don't know.
So basically, it's like, hey, I got preferential treatment because I'm inside and I'm like butlery. Y'all go outside.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Or sophomores who bully freshmen because the sophomores are being bullied by the juniors and the seniors. So it all trickles down. It's a culture of classism, and when you have a culture of classism and oppression, the lower classes will start to stratify because they're all struggling to get resources, and that's what we see in Toy Story 3. The last detail I would say is that the CGI in Toy Story 1 is terrible.
I mean, for the time, it was revolutionary.
Yeah,
but yes,
1995. I mean, it was.
Yes.
But when the leaps, actually,
it's
each
crazy.
movie, you see the leap just from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, and then 3 to 4.
It's
Four,
insane, dude.
4 looks amazing.
Yeah.
Like it just looks
But it's funny because your mind it tricks you, right? Because
Yeah.
until you go back and watch, you're
Yeah.
thinking, oh yeah, these are the same characters.
Right.
Then you go back and watch, you're like,
no.
oh my God.
Yeah, very, very different. I mean, they kept the themes the same essentially,
Totally,
but yeah, I mean, I thought that was pretty notable. But yeah, of course, for the time, I mean, Jurassic Park was late 90s, I'm guessing.
No. Jurassic Park?
Yeah.
No, that was 93, right?
Oh, was it? This
Yeah.
was around the same time.
Jurassic Park holds up way better because it was mostly
Yeah.
real with the CG. This was the first full length, like, of this level of computer graphics. Like, that's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
And it proved not only like, okay, well, what a technical achievement. It was like best movie of the year almost, you know?
Yeah, good story. That was
Yeah.
the thing that Lassiter
Yeah.
and Pixar always did was like,
Right.
okay, we're technical geniuses, but we got to have a good, solid, classic story.
Absolutely. Otherwise, it's a gimmick. It's crazy.
Final word on the psychology of Toy Story, Berto.
Those movies have moved me every single time. I'd say 1 and 3 the most. And they do actually have so many themes that, as we've talked about today, that are beyond just the surface. They also bring back a lot of memories, both good and painful. I will say one last thing is I kind of want them to stop for now. I was actually really happy with 3, and I think they did a good thing with 4, but I don't know if I want them to keep making more and more Toy Stories right now. You know, but
I'm on the fence. I went into 4. Actually, it took me a while to see 4 in the theaters because I was just like, do I really need it? But I was like, well, I got good reviews. And I'm so glad I saw it. I just love that world.
sure, but I mean, or maybe do a different thing. Like maybe do a
Forky,
like a very different thing with none of the original characters, but like
like a Fast and Furious,
Yeah,
Hobbs and Shaw, or a Solo, a Star
or just
Wars.
let it live for a little bit. Why does everything have to be a sequel or remake?
Well,
Do you know the only original movie out right now? Not really, but Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was one of the only original things out right now.
Well, so Toy Story, the sequels are like 10 years apart. So if the next one is 10 years from now, I'm good with that. You know?
Sure. Yeah. I'm down.
My final word about the similar to yours, Berto, is like the emotions that I have felt in this. I mean, 3 and 4 are, very memorable experiences for me. I have always been confused by adults that don't go see, what's a cartoon. Pixar, stories like Toy Story are some of the best stories, some of the best films, Inside Out, some of the best films that have ever been made.
Yeah.
And just because it's a cartoon or it's about kids, just because it doesn't have like blood and guts and mobsters and boobs and butts and penises.
Well, you're getting me kind of excited. What movie is this that you're talking about?
Just because you don't have that, somehow it's not considered like an
Right.
awesome movie that you think about. Toy Story and its ilk, Megamind, for example. I mean, I even like some of the lesser known Pixar ones, like the one about the dinosaur.
Oh yeah, that's right. The Good Dinosaur.
The Good Dinosaur,
Yeah.
beautiful movie. I've seen it a few times. It's underrated, I think.
It is.
I just love it, and I feel like people should watch it all the time. If you're a parent with young kids, you've probably watched it very often. And I just commend Pixar and I guess Lassiter for creating something that infiltrated a culture that was really averse to watching cartoons as adults. I hope that Lassiter and the thousands of other people that have not been caught yet, by the way, and not outed yet, can get the help they need and stop doing what they're doing.
Indeed.
And I am waiting on the edge of my seat for the next Pixar movie because they just keep pumping out some of the best stories and tear-jerking moments that I've ever seen. That does it for that episode of Psychology in Seattle. Thanks for joining me out there. Please take care of yourself because
you deserve it.